Donald Trump tells Glenn Beck, you have no choice. He will absolutely lock people up if returned to the White House. He didn't say it with much enthusiasm, but here's the clip for all of you. And
lock her up. And then when you became president, you said, we don't do that in America. That's just not the right thing to do. That's what they're doing. Do you regret not locking her up? And if you're president again, will you lock people up?
Well, I'll give you an example. The answer is you have no choice because they're doing it to us. I always had such great respect for the office of the president, the presidency, but the office of the president, and I never hit Biden as hard as I could have. And then I heard he was trying to indict me, and it was him that was doing it. You know, I don't think he's sharp enough to think about much, but he was there, and he was probably the one giving the order.
Even Glenn Beck's laughing.
He was, hard to believe that he even thinks about that because he's gone. But then I said, well, they're actually trying to indict me because every one of these indictments is him, including Bragg. Bragg put his...
So we get it. He says he's going to lock people up. What I want to add to this is Rachel Maddow recently said that Donald Trump is only running because he wants to solve his legal problems. But that's actually Joe Biden.
Right.
And now that Joe Biden is president, he's probably saying, all I can do is either win re-election or lock Trump up. But if Trump wins, I'm going down. And of course, you have to accuse your opponents of doing what you in fact are doing. So Rachel Maddow comes out, blames Trump, says he wants to be president for life. I guess the question is, one, do you really think Trump will do this? And then after we answer that, my question for you, Joshua, is are you also going to lock people up?
I definitely want to investigate the COVID regime and
Fauci,
Fauci, Safer, any governors
you
that
say yes.
Who's
Safer? Because
yes,
I feel like saying just the COVID regime doesn't go far enough.
Yes.
Go far enough. Oh,
not
Phil's
nearly far.
There's definitely people that need to be locked up.
Don't let them turn you to the dark side.
Yes. No, they won't.
No, the light is trying to save.
There is
and get rid of
nothing.
these criminals.
There is nothing.
Divine fire.
There is nothing illiberal about enforcing the law.
It depends on the law.
Yeah, it depends on the law for sure.
No, because if you have a liberal society, especially a society like ours that protects the people, protects rights, your laws should not be violating people's rights, not without due process. So if you've got someone that has been using the federal government, to enrich their own family, there's nothing immoral about enforcing the law or investigating it. Earlier today, I tweeted, there's currently a mountain of circumstantial evidence Joe Biden is engaged in pay for influence in Ukraine via his son. The president of the United States, Donald Trump, was impeached by the Democrats for investigating this. That's actually what happened. There is no reason why we shouldn't investigate the entire Biden administration, the whole administration, his family. All of his business associates.
Who's
gonna force that investigation though?
Well, I mean, I'm saying that would be if Trump were to be elected.
Here's the big question: do you actually think Trump is going to do anything?
It's not. I don't think it's a matter of whether or not Trump will want to. I think it's a matter of whether Trump will be able to successfully execute, because it's a matter of, can he find people in government that could fulfill the roles, that are competent, that will be able to get into positions in the bureaucracy and actually investigate and prosecute. Will they be able, because that there are going to be people in FBI and CIA and stuff like that are going to be doing all they can to hide stuff. So it's a matter of, will he be able to get people that are effective? Will he want to? I think he'll want to. Will he execute? Who knows?
This is we just heard that Enrique Tarrio's sentencing was delayed because the judge fell ill. It was an emergency. And they're trying to lock up Enrique and other members of the Proud Boys for 33 years.
Ridiculous.
Donald Trump gets elected. These men are pardoned. They're
should be.
I believe Trump pardons them.
Everybody on January 6th, even the people that were getting into fights with cops, they've already done their time. They've already done enough time.
Now consider this.
Let them go.
If we are talking about civil war, everybody drink.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
You have these individuals being accused and convicted of seditious conspiracy. Quite literally, they were accused of a plot to overthrow the United States in support of Donald Trump. The argument being brought forward by the Democrats is that Trump was their leader who actually wanted them and encouraged them to do this. If Trump gets elected, how will the view of the left not be Donald Trump succeeded in overthrowing the United States government.
That will be the narrative. It will be shoved down people's throat, and every single wine mom is going to buy it.
So how could any of these liberals or leftists argue we are not in a civil war if they believe that Proud Boys were engaged in a seditious conspiracy at the direction of Donald Trump to overthrow the United States, and Donald Trump still has a path to gain power? In fact, they believe he currently is likely to win.
I think that will be the narrative. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That's going to be the narrative everyone runs with, especially if he wins. Do you honestly think that he will pardon Enrique, though?
Yes.
You do?
I'm not saying it's 100%.
Sure.
But I think we've already got I'm Not Your Buddy guy in the super chat saying Robert Barnes for AG. I'm wondering if Trump plays the tepid role and just wins and goes, we got to slow down, blah, blah, blah. Or does Trump go in and say, at this point, I am done. And then Robert Barnes, he starts bringing in diehard Trump supporters to do these jobs who will do it without question. Because he did not do that the first time. He went to his donors, he went to the establishment and said, who do you think would be good? Let's play ball. And then they tried to destroy him. And he walked the line. You've got these false charges, these accusations of being a Russian spy. You've got he tries to dig into the Ukraine scandal and they impeach him over it. And what does he do? Nothing.
Right.
So I'm not entirely convinced, but I do think there's a possibility that if Trump is elected, it's revenge. And then you'll see MAGA personalities. I mean, look at Jeffrey Clark, acting assistant attorney general, and they've criminally indicted him. Mm-hmm. If Trump brings that guy back, I imagine he's going to be like, I can't imagine, because we've had Jeffrey Clark here. Right. I can't imagine he's the kind of guy who's going to be like, I want revenge. No, he's going to be the guy who says, these people are corrupt, and if we're going to save this country, they must be criminally charged.
Right.
Joshua, I have a question. How many and what departments would you abolish?
Oh, we don't
Cabinet level.
Hold on. Wait.
There's not enough time on the show.
No. It's easier to ask which departments.
Which ones would you leave? Thank you. I appreciate that, Tim. Which ones would you leave?
I can't even think of any right now. I know that we're going after the ATF first. I believe 100%. And Vivek talked a lot about this. That can't actually. The president doesn't actually have the power to go in and abolish some of these things like on his own.
No, but Vivek mentioned like
mass layoffs.
It's not about layoffs. It's about organizational
the RFI as well, where you can transfer out and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's like when you're a boss at a company and you can't fire someone, so you put them in the janitor's closet and hope they quit. My
goal is to get rid of everybody at the ATF and then level the ATF building and turn it into a dog park. I'd auction off all the leftover ATF equipment.
No. I absolutely.
So that we can pay reparations to people who had to unconstitutionally buy NFA tax stamps.
I am offended by this notion. I reject this notion. The ATF building should be turned into large gun super malls.
That would be good too. Yes, we can do both with the different buildings. But I think in honor of all the dogs murdered,
I know so.
Right.
I have a friendly relationship with the people at Brownells, and I wonder if they want a new location in Washington D.C.
And Martinsburg.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Apparently they're up there too.
Absolutely. No, I can't think of many.
I can't think of an agency that I'd keep
right now. No.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm like, there's got to be one.
I had a really good conversation with Austin Peterson the other day.
We do have to keep the DOJ. I think we have to keep the DOJ.
Well, I had a good conversation about the CIA.
I know, but maybe the Department of Transportation,
Department of Energy is the one I'm thinking of.
Cars.
Yeah,
all those states can do that.
But if we're trying to manage interstate rail and freight and stuff, it might make sense. I mean, I'm not saying it does to have some kind of organizing body so it's easier for California to adjudicate, between other states if like Wyoming has got an issue and then. I guess the courts could handle that.
Well, I know the IRS is gone right away.
First one out the door.
and I would like to abolish the income tax entirely. That includes estate tax, payroll tax, and capital gains tax.
How do people not vote for this?
And then I want to institute what's user fees, which is what the federal government always should have been.
User fees.
User fees.
Yeah. How does that work?
If you're an American paying the federal government, and you don't need anything from the federal government. There's no reason you should be paying the federal government. Period. Plain and simple.
So, like, what if you want to drive on an interstate highway? Toll?
So if there's a maybe we go to some kind of toll system too. But there's already a lot of toll booths for a lot of different interstates around the country. But user fees, and it would be a while.
There's already a gas tax. Like people forget that the tax in your gas.
Taxes.
There's a federal tax in every gallon of gas that is sold, and the reason that there's a federal tax, what sold people on it was the tax is going to be used to pay for the highways. Right. So you've got the federal government taxing every gallon of gas. They have plenty of money.
But that's all going to pet projects, though. That's not going to going to the city. But that's the problem. Is that all these bills are packed with pork, and they're paying for pet projects. I mean, it comes out of Social Security, it comes out of the gas tax, it comes out of everything.
The point is, we don't need to have an income tax for a lot of the things that people think we need the income tax for. And also, our government works with a modern monetary policy basic theory. So they don't really care about collecting taxes to pay for anything. If they want something, they print the money to make it, and then they just collect taxes to reduce inflation.
Just really quickly to add your point, and I don't know how many people watching know this, but prior to the National Tax Act and even the 16th Amendment, there was still a government that operated before they stole your money straight from your paycheck. Yeah, absolutely. And
that's just a story they tell kids to scare them.
You know, if you want national defense or whatever, I mean, listen, any patriotic American that likes their national defense system, if you told them, we're not going to take your payroll taxes anymore, but would you be willing to voluntarily crowdfund our national military with $10 a month? I guarantee there's millions of people that are going to pay for that every single month.
I got an idea. We talked about this with Vivek. If you want to vote, you have to sign up for the draft.
That's there's a lot of theories like that. Sign up for the draft. There's also if you want to vote, you should be a property owner, a landowner. I don't know if you've heard that one floating around.
Yeah, I don't agree with that because we're in an era of renting, which didn't exist back in the day. It made sense back in the day. It's like, hey, if you live here, you can vote on what we're doing. Right. But if you don't live here, why are you voting on what we're doing? You don't live here. Now it's like, well, I do live here. I rent a room upstairs.
I'm anti-draft, so I don't think that conscription is a good thing.
So let me ask you though, if let's say that the all these apartments are abolished. You get elected president. You walk in. You start signing executive orders so fast. Your right arm is just massive and ripped.
We're going to, yeah.
And you've signed like 10,000 documents. You're drenched in sweat. The rest of your body is disheveled and falling apart.
So like Joe Biden at a normal speaking,
just curling with your left arm while you're signing. With
after
your right.
all of that, a libertarian utopia exists, and then China invades California with a massive force of 300,000 troops, and they start just gunning down and massacring people. And at that point, do you say, we need a draft, we need to get people to come and fight?
No, so I wouldn't, listen, if you people were wild enough to actually put me in the White House, okay, let's say that first, okay, as a libertarian, if you guys are crazy enough to put me in the White House right now, I appreciate it. I'm gonna do all the work I possibly can to make sure that people have more freedoms every day. I'm not in any place to immediately cut the military. That's just crazy. Bringing troops home, stopping wars abroad, closing down some bases that we don't need around the world, I think that's an important step. And then a more aggressive mental health care policy for our vets that are coming home from abroad that need to reintegrate in with their wives and families and stuff, because we haven't taken care of our veterans in this country at all. I am a veteran. But it's not like I'm going to come in on day one and be like, that's it, all military's done, you're all going home.
I'm just saying, in the hypothetical scenario,
you're talking about an anarchist society.
I'm just saying, in the hypothetical scenario that the United States is directly invaded and we have multiple forces storming our beaches and taking over our cities, you still oppose conscription?
Yes, I would oppose conscription, and in fact, I think that our citizens are going to do what the military would do on their own for their own home.
You think they'd volunteer?
I think they're going to take up arms. I mean, we have more guns here in the United States. That's why no one's ever really invaded the United States. There's more guns here.
Yeah, but also the United States is real damn big to invade.
Yeah, it's hard.
You look at
like crossing the mountains would be insane.
It'd be harder than Afghanistan for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I was saying earlier, like getting through the mountain ranges in the West Coast. Like people talk about, China invading, blah blah blah. The Rockies will shut down and advance like nothing.
Appalachia.
Appalachia would too. I mean, like the U.S. has.
Could you imagine
really
like
defendable
the Great Lakes too?
Russia or China invading and they're trying to move westward through Appalachia. And there's a bunch of
they're done.
Right-wing nut jobs with the Barrett M82s up on a mountain.
Yes.
Just
picking them off one by one.
If you don't, well, I don't know if you would need to institute a draft to defend, but if there's no military command overseeing the logistics, then it would just be disparate factions.
I don't think we're going to get
literally the best option if you're trying to defend. That's exactly what the Taliban does. They don't have a centralized thing to defend.
The Taliban got whipped around for 2 decades.
and they took over in 2 seconds.
You're not you're not talking about individual engagements. Individual engagements, the Taliban lose. Individual engagements, the Vietnamese lost. But because of the policy goal that the governments had, they were unattainable. So even the individual battles and engagements they lose, they're never going to achieve the policy goals, which is why rifles and a determined enemy will always beat an invading army.
And I will say to look up the Afghanistan papers if you haven't. I'm sure your crowd already knows about that. But the government knew that was an unwinnable war in Afghanistan, 100%, even at the very beginning.
But what they had to do to defend was the Taliban was living in caves and the Vietnamese were living underground, literally in tunnels for 10 years. They lived in tunnels.
And
what do you
think that people in Appalachia are going to do that?
Yes.
They're doing that now.
I think they would prefer that than having the Marines.
What's the option?
It's our backyard. The option is you
invasion.
draft your neighbors and you get organized with the military.
It's an invasion.
I'm not forcing anybody to fight a war. There's
a defensive war. I mean, that's what the draft is for.
People are going to fight it anyways here in the United States.
If they invade and they take a beachhead and they take land, they're all the federal government is already strapped. If a foreign government, a foreign military actually manages to establish a beachhead and have the beginning of an infrastructure to take mainland United States, the government has to be in shambles by then anyways.
Let me
for that to even become a possibility.
I disagree.
You don't think the federal government
Southern border?
No, well, that's by design. That's not landing craft. I'm talking about landing craft. I'm talking about big army
that
invasion.
It is a beachhead. I'm saying the federal government is incapable of dealing with. Perhaps it is by design, but I don't think. I think people overestimate the capabilities of the United States. I absolutely do. There are people who have been saying over and over again for years, the federal government won't allow this, they won't allow that. It's like how many federal law enforcement officers and how many people you think are in the military?
The military is somewhere around.
I'll tell you this: if I was a tyrant and I was running this country as a tyrant, and I wanted to weaken this country to make it submit, one of the things I would do is I would send all of my troops to over 200 bases around the country.
In the world,
yeah, 200 bases around the world. And make it very easy to invade this country. Do you think if we started bringing our troops home, you'd be as worried about us having a war here in the United States?
I'd be less worried if our troops were at home.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. So bringing them home is the important and good and righteous thing, in my opinion.
There is the argument of staging offensive operations to prevent an attack.
The United States.
I just want to stress, I really love the idea of imagining what would it be like if a foreign invader came to Appalachia.
I do it all the time. It's so fun.
It's so fun to imagine because when you go up to there's various mountains over here, and we know all the people who live on these mountains, and they lovingly call themselves right-wing nut jobs.
Yes.
And then they have guns everywhere. And I'm just saying, there'll be a guy up on a mountain with his Barrett and he's going to be like, just waiting. And it's like, do you want to, no one's coming. It's like, I want to be here in case they do.
I think the age of ground invasion is kind of, not really over, but World War II, they had to drop nukes on Japan because they knew a ground invasion of the island would have been 1 million dead Americans. You can't fight an entrenched force. No. It'd be insane for them to send ground invasion in the United States. It'd all be drone warfare. Right.
It would drone
swarms and stuff.
So here's the first thing you get. You'd get cyber attacks, which would cut off your infrastructure.
You'd
lose gasoline, oil, electricity goes out. Then you'll get strategic drone strikes. After the infrastructure is just ripped to shreds, then you get the ground forces coming in to secure the territory. You cannot occupy a street corner with a drone. Yeah. So after they decimate any kind of infrastructure, I mean, really, people need to consider what it means if our oil pipelines get shut down.
That's another thing people don't realize. That there's only a handful of places that actually refine oil. So Jersey, right outside of New York City, New Orleans, and I believe in LA. Those are the 3 places that you can import oil into the U.S. And if I understand correctly, and I could be wrong, but if I understand correctly, that's it. You take out those cities or those refineries, and the U.S. oil production, I believe, comes close to a standstill is significantly hurt.
Rachel Maddow had that famous line where she's like, Russia could shut off your electricity in the winter with a cyber attack. It's like, well, what they'd probably do is they'd probably just destroy the North Dakota frack fields.
Yeah.
Large amounts of energy produced in these areas, fossil fuels. They'd shut that down.
They'd have to come through Canada to get there.
No, they wouldn't. They'd go on their computer in Russia and type a few lines of code and hit enter, and it goes down. Now, that is whether or not you believe that we have defensive capabilities in our infrastructure. Right. 10 years ago, we did not. We were running industrial control systems from the 70s. And of course, I guess the prevailing theory, or one of them, was that every major world power had already gained a death grip on the cyber infrastructure of every other country. And at any minute, mutually assured destruction at that point was, we press enter and your electricity goes out and it's not coming back. And then the response was, yeah, we'll do the same to you because we have off-network machines that are capable of shutting you down. Mutually assured destruction, everyone thinks is nukes flying. At this point, it's a guy pressing enter. And look at Stuxnet. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was 10 years ago.
Iranian.
Amazing. Yeah. They were like, release the virus and let it go into the wild and eventually find its way to the Iranian centrifuges and blow them up.
They don't even need to do anything on U.S. soil, whether cyber attack or invasion. Canals, the Suez and Panama. We're already seeing the impacts of the Panama backup. Imagine, like, we rely on all of our products, all of our lives through China. So what if they stop all transportation coming from that way? You know? So I'm not even worried about the U.S.
People...
You know,
it's a really good argument for making more things in America, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but people really don't understand and haven't taken into consideration what would happen during a war. And we have not even ever scratched the surface on what would happen. You know, we were talking about civil war the other night, and I forgot who the guest was. They said peaceful divorce, which I said is absolutely impossible.
Divorce.
Yeah. National impossible. But peaceful divorce. It's like a peaceful, impossible because of resource war. Because North Dakota is producing energy, because California is reliant on the Colorado River. It flows through Nevada. Nevada could shut it down. Arizona could shut it down. Colorado could shut it down. And then everyone downstream is pulling out guns.
A lot of Chinese were shutting down a river that was going into India. That's a big tension spot between the two countries.
As a national divorce supporter, I also agree with you. I don't think that it would be completely peaceful, but who is going to be the unpeaceful one in that situation?
What do you mean who?
China in a national divorce?
But what do you mean who?
Like the federal government will tell the states they can't leave. Right?
But it's not about states. It's not about states leaving. The idea that civil war is I say this 50 billion times is going to follow the track of 1861 is an absurd notion. Sure. Like one time this thing happened and now everyone's like, that's how all civil wars will always be. Right. No, more likely what will happen is Arizona will say we need to build a reservoir because of the drought impacts we've been having. So we're going to begin construction. Nevada then says, if you do this, you will cut off our water supply for 16 months and we will die. And they'll say, if we don't do this, we will die. And then Nevada says, you are not cutting our water off. And then Arizona says, try us. There you go. The question is whether or not the federal government can be stretched so thin. People overestimate the power of the U.S. U.S. federal law enforcement and of the military. If we are engaged in conflict on our border or internationally, and we actively are with U.S. troops being sent to Europe, and confidence is lost in the federal government for a variety of reasons, all that needs to happen is not that a state secedes, but that a state has a problem that cannot be adjudicated properly, and there is no federal law enforcement to come and prevent violence from erupting. I don't know if that can happen or when it could happen or whatever. I'm saying in the event that a national divorce happens, it doesn't have to be that Nevada files a declaration of secession. It can be that Nevada just says, guys, we're losing water, and the Biden administration has not responded to us. They've told us they're strapped and they can't send law enforcement. We're on our own now. And then you get interstate conflict.
I'm wondering from your perspective, Josh, like the issue I have with libertarianism, I feel like it doesn't jive with the presidency because it's such an authoritarian role. Like you're the military commander. You're supposed, that's your main job is command the military. So like, how would you handle the military in with Taiwan? Or if there wasn't, you said you wouldn't issue a draft, you would just let people like be on their own?
Yeah, I think if you're going to join the military, it should always be on voluntary terms. We should never make anybody a war fighter because we say they have to be a war fighter. I think that goes way against the whole entire identity of consent. And so, yes, I'm definitely against that. Listen, I don't know. I know that since the Nixon era with the Taiwan and China thing, we've kind of had this double fail-safe where we're like, China, don't mess with Taiwan. We may go to war with you. And then with Taiwan, it was kind of like, listen, Taiwan, don't mess with China. We may not protect you. And it's worked since then. But now, obviously, it's not. And I think it's such a weird thing because we have a government that's saying Russia's not allowed to take a rogue province from Ukraine, but on the other hand, China's not allowed to take. I guess I'm mixing that up. They're not allowed to have their rogue province in Taiwan, right? And Ukraine has to get theirs back or whatever, even though they're mostly ethnic Russians living there. And so I'm not gonna like go and play civil war around the country with our military. It's not worked out for us. It's not worked out in the Middle East. That for decades and decades and decades. I think it's bad.
I mean, just more to defend against an invasion, not defend against.
Yeah, and I'm not at all against national defense. I think we have a much better chance of defending against an invasion if we have our troops at home, because nobody's trying to come here and attack us since 1930s, right? I mean, Pearl Harbor 40s,
and that's still technically very, very far away.
Yeah.
Hawaii is very far.
Yeah.
It was a military operation.
Yeah, it's far away. And it's like when we're talking about Taiwan is 7,000 miles away from here. It's only 90 miles from China. You know what I mean? If we go and have this theater over there by Taiwan, we're going to lose an aircraft carrier maybe. And what's Joe Biden going to do if we lose an aircraft carrier? I mean, it's going to get real ugly real quick.
It feels so much like Ukraine. Like it's just a little piece of land that's right next to their country that we have control of. It's like, dude, what?
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.